utter,
indescribable,
head bopping,
hand clapping,
yelling at the screen,
ugly crying,
won't he do it?
glory given,
Put some respect on my team.
culture moving,
Culture moving, mic dropping, can I proceed?
Yes, indeed.
Culture's biggest night, the 2021 BET Awards, live June 27th at 8 on BET.
This is the game of basketball. Poetry in motion. Legend burned into imagination. This game takes everything you give and gives back even more. This is a single moment becoming a leader. Selflessness recognized. Fight of a lifetime. It breaks hearts, bends minds, and drops jaws. That's bigger than basketball. That's game.
Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports. Coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. Them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenido to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more. The good old boys down south is the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful June the 11th, 2021. Rondo Deportes, Big C is actually at a game. Someplace in the land down south, it's all fair and level war. I'll be running solo tonight on a beautiful, happy Friday. I want to wish everybody nothing but the best on a beautiful, happy Friday. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really do appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV. Oh, you be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, it's all fair and love and war. Lots of great things going on. The BET Awards coming up this month. It's all fair and love and war. Also, a lot of NBA basketball and also Major League Baseball doing their thing. But I want to make sure that I pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. And as we always say, I ask Big C, you know, more people are doing it, Big C. And I really appreciate that we've been doing this for 3 years because you introduced it. It's all fair and love and war. If you know any veteran or family member that's going through a little bit of a hiccup in life, just pick up the phone and call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can definitely get some help for our veterans and their loved ones, and oftentimes even yourself. All fair and love and war. I want to say I'm really happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants and the Say Hey Kid, as well as the Home Run King Barry Bonds. When you reach out to him, just tell him Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 10,000 real estate agents and brokers all over this country to help put their properties on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships doing it, Nike's doing it, sports teams are doing it. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. Most of our loans are underwritten by Rocket Mortgage, the #1 lender in the country on the wholesale side. There's also a great commercial that's sponsored by Rocket Mortgage. There's an actor by the name of Tracy Morgan, and he has his family that's looking to buy a house, and he's taking them to these different scenarios where he says, I'm pretty sure we can do it. When he was trying to drive them across the bridge, and he said, I'm pretty sure we can make it. And it showed they probably didn't make it across the bridge. When you're trying to get your home run, you don't want to be pretty sure. You want to be rocket sure, if that makes sense to you. It's all fair and level. Where I also want to say thank you to Xfinity Comcast TV and Comcast Spotlight for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like God said in Genesis 1:3, let there be light. Open your cell phone and say play Big C Sports Podcast. You will see all of our apps all over the world, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Also, I want to say Big C Sports is sponsored by your Budweiser Zero. It has 0% alcohol, 100% of your gain. It also goes great with the Big C Burger. It is a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meat. So all you sports fans, we are out there. Make sure that you get the Big C Burger. It tastes great in your mouth and not in your hands, because if it's in your hands, you better be putting it in your mouth. It's all fair and level warm. I love the Big C Burger and also Budweiser Zero. Man, there are so many things going on in the world of sports, Big C. I know I just want to pay homage to our WNBA first, because oftentimes with all the great sports going on when it comes to NBA basketball, oftentimes we take the women and give them a backseat. I don't want to give the women a backseat. We have Dallas. They are playing at Phoenix tonight. And also Seattle, they're playing at Atlanta. And you know, it's amazing that the city of Phoenix, Arizona, they're having a lot of success when it comes to basketball. Also Atlanta having a lot of success when it comes to basketball. That's WNBA and NBA basketball. So I love paying homage to the women of the world of basketball. I want to touch on a few things that are happening in the world of sports, especially when it comes to some of the games that we've already had played. But as I was talking to Big C earlier today, before he snuck into the game, I won't say which game he was at, but it's all fair and level world when you have those media passes. You know, there's a situation that happened in Milwaukee where I think Kevin Durant had a bodyguard that ended up being on the court, and I believe the NBA had to say no. You got to cut down on having your personal bodyguards coming onto the court, because he was having an issue with Tucker for the Milwaukee Bucks. That's unnecessary. It should not be allowed. And if we're going to have what we just experienced not too long ago, we just had a lot of fans that were misbehaving. They were acting poorly. They were spitting on players. They were also throwing popcorn. Russell Westbrook got popcorn dumped on him. And Trae Young, someone spit a loogie on him, if that makes sense to you. It is New York, so you kind of expect those things in New York, but most civilized people don't do that. And we ever had another game where a fan went onto the court. So I know there's a lot of people that have their own personal security. I know a lot of people who do private security as well. But to have an athlete have a personal security guard or bodyguard come onto the court and try to interfere with what's going on between those lines, that should be outlawed. There should be no excuse for it. And if you think about it, what if every player had a personal bodyguard that came onto the court every time they had a scuffle? That would be a lot of negative things that could happen with those consequences. I know the NBA, Adam Silver, if you're going to do right, you got to let Kevin Durant know and that bodyguard that some things are simply not acceptable. And if you do nothing about it, then you tacitly consent to it. The next time someone could actually get injured, and there would be a lot of more challenges that we would have to deal with when it comes to security. Again, no personal bodyguards allowed on any court at any time, especially if there's a melee that breaks out. Most of the times players can handle that on their own. I want to talk about some injuries that continue to play a role in the postseason. Denver's Michael Porter Jr., he was listed on the injury report for Game 2. And then at Denver's only health issue, I believe the only health issue outside of their coach saying that they didn't play hard, if that's a health issue, it's all fair level war. But when you think about it, Will Barton returned from a hamstring injury, and they played for the first time since April 23rd. P.J. Dozier missed another game with a strained right abductor. Of course, the great Jamal Murray is also out with a torn left ACL. There's a lot of players who've been focused on how do they stay healthy. It's a tough industry. You got to run up and down the court. There's a lot of stress put on you. Unlike football, you don't get time off. You're either offense or defense all the time. Unlike baseball, you don't get time off and wait for the pitcher to throw another pitch to the batter. You're always on offense or always on defense. So that makes it a little bit more difficult for NBA players to stay healthy. I know oftentimes Big C has his own issues with sometimes players not playing through pain, but they make too much money to put $100 million injury in the way of them playing longer. It's all fair and level war. Atlanta, the Hawks, just lost DeAndre Hunter for the remainder of the playoffs due to a small tear in his lateral meniscus in his right knee. Hunter also scheduled for surgery this weekend. It was a part, actually a big key part of the Hawks rotation, and that cost them tonight doing a later edition of Big C Sports. It's all fair and level war on beautiful Friday, June the 11th, 2021. The BJ, he came, he saw, he conquered. Big C. It's all fair and level war. But speaking of small tears of the lateral meniscus, that's the same injury that the great Joel Embiid, the all-star, multi-time all-star with the Philadelphia 76ers, sustained in the first round against Washington. He was doing his thing tonight, Big C. I think he had I think he has like a size 19 shoe, and he was putting that to the backside of some of those Hawks down there in Atlanta. It's all fair and level war, Big C. He's actually pushing through with physical therapy and treatment, and the Sixers will go as far as Embiid and the knee can take them. He had a situation tonight where he went up to block a shot, and he tried to block the shot of the great Clint Capella, and he actually fell over the backside of Clint Capella and landed right up under the basket, and he was on the court for just a few moments, but he toughed it out. It was actually a foul call on that play. It was a foul call on Embiid. Capella went to the line, and Embiid stood on near the free throw line, and he got better. So hopefully he'll be okay. May need to ice that down. It's all fair and level war. When you think of Brooklyn has the talent to overcome injuries, and they're gonna have. My goodness, everyone thought we were gonna see a sweep, but that didn't happen against the Milwaukee Bucks. We'll talk about that later. But Brooklyn has a talent to overcome injuries. They've done it all year, which is a huge benefit. Most teams don't have that, even without the great James Harden, Jeff Green for 2 more games of their season series. When you think about that against Milwaukee, Spencer Dinwiddie hasn't played since a partially tearing of his ACL, and that's his right knee, December 27th. And so we know these guys have to stay healthy. That machismo talk of the back in the day, Big C, guys got to tough it out and play through it. Not when you're sitting on $100 million of contracts that you're going to force yourself to play through pain and then tear your knee or an ankle or a tendon in your calf. It's not necessary when you have that kind of money. And maybe back in the day they didn't have those situations where they could afford to just go out and maybe hurt themselves even more and get through it. It's all fair and level war though. But when you think about it, the Bucks were in a hole. And when you're in a hole, what do? You try to get out. At least most of the time, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Most holes, you want to get out as soon as possible. Others, not as soon as possible, if that makes sense to you. But when you think about it, the Bucks are in a hole. It doesn't help that Dante DiVincenzo, Big C, started each of the 66 games that he played in the regular season. He's out. He's out after needing surgery to repair a torn ligament in his left ankle. And that's what I say to you, Big C. Oftentimes you may say that guys like Anthony Davis, you call him a 10-man, and he has, I think, about 195 million reasons not to try to be machismo, but to just look at his bank account and realize criticism's not going to put money in his bank. It's him being healthy. And so if you feel like you're going to hurt yourself, some guys, they try to play through that with that machismo and having surgery, as we see DiVincenzo needs surgery on a torn ligament. It's all fair and level where I hope he gets better. And he will. Medical science and technology is so much better. When you look at Utah, if you haven't seen the Wasatch Mountains in Utah, it's one of the most beautiful mountain ranges in the universe. It's all fair and level war. Backdrop of the Utah Jazz. They have managed a 2-0 series lead against the LA Clippers without the great Mike Conley due to a mild right hamstring strain. Here's another guy, Big C. Mike Conley's not sitting out because he doesn't have heart. He's not sitting out because he's afraid to play. He's sitting out because he has an injury. And when guys have injured and they have multi-million-dollar contracts, they don't care about criticism. They're going to put that money in the bank, and they're going to listen to their doctors and their trainers. That's more important than what anybody in the media says, and everybody knows that's true. The Phoenix Suns, they really maintain most of their health. Outside of the great Chris Paul, had a little hitch in his giddy-up, and he played through it in this series against the Los Angeles Lakers, and he's playing through it right now against the Denver Nuggets So we know he's going to do his best to stay healthy and get right back in the saddle. And I'm sure they're more concerned about can they win this series as opposed to what people think about them if they're not playing tough enough. You know, I wanna take a little pause before I come up with some more. I told you it's an abbreviated Friday, but I want to take a little pause when it talks about injuries. It's important. In the mouth of a whale. You ever been in the mouth of a whale, Big C? I mean, maybe you have. With as much fishing as you've done, I'm sure you've been in the mouth of a couple of whales down south. It's all fair and level war. But in the mouth of a whale in Massachusetts, there was a whale where a lobster diver was swallowed by a humpback whale. And he actually lives to tell the tale about it. I think the whale was looking for the Big C burger. He knows it's a tasty burger, and he knows it comes with exotic meats. But all fair love and war, the Cape Cod fisherman estimates that he was at least in the mouth of a whale for about 30 seconds. In 30 seconds, he's a commercial lobster diver who caught in the mouth of a humpback whale off the coast of Cape Cod on Friday morning. Said that he thought he was going to die. His name is Michael Packard. He's 56 years old, and he told the TV station in Cape Cod, Big C, that he was released from Cape Cod Hospital and that he was about 45 feet deep, about 14 meters deep off the waters of Provincetown, and all of a sudden he felt this huge bump and everything went dark, Big C. He thought that he'd been attacked by a shark, which is common in the area waters, but he realized he could not feel any teeth, Big C, which is actually a good thing if you're in the mouth of the whale and you could not feel any teeth. We've heard about the whale story in the good book, Big C. But then he realized, he said, oh my God, I'm in the mouth of a whale and he's trying to swallow me, he said. And he thought to himself, okay, this is going to be something he got to get himself out of. He still had his breathing apparatus on, and that's what saved his life. But then the whale surfaced, shook his head, and spat him out and said, this is not the Big C burger. This isn't the burger that comes with exotic meats that's very tasty. It's all fair and love and war. But could you imagine how blessed that man feels that he was swimming off the coast of Cape Cod? And it's obviously a lot of people get over there, they hear about shark attacks in that part of the country, but it was a whale. It's a rare encounter. Humpbacks are not aggressive, and they think it was just an accidental encounter while the whale was feeding off a fish, likely called sand lance. It's all fair and love and war. But I will say that man nothing but the best. Everybody knows if you ever get caught in the mouth of a whale, the first thing you do is get out. It's all fair and love and war. We'll take a slight abbreviation of the Big C pause, and in the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. Back to the world of the NBA. We had this great game. Ironically, it was the Milwaukee Bucks getting over on the Brooklyn Nets. It was 86-83, and you know who told us it was going to happen? I did. I'm going to take credit for that one. I was wrong on the Lakers beating the Suns, but it's all fair and love and war. But the Las Vegas, the people down in Las Vegas who never lie about anything, right? They never. You can always trust anybody you meet in Vegas. It's all fair and love and war. But Milwaukee, they know that Las Vegas said, after getting blown out twice in Brooklyn, they said that actually Milwaukee would win this game, and I guess everyone put money, or at least the betting world put money, that Brooklyn would go up 3-0. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, he said, not so fast, my friend. It's all fair and love and war. Drew Holiday figured to be an exciting player, and he has been for Milwaukee. The Brooklyn Nets expected him to call a timeout as soon as he got the ball, and his team fell by 1 in the final minute. Instead, the great Drew Holiday, he delivered just in time to keep the Milwaukee Bucks from falling into a hole, like the hole of that whale's mouth in Cape Cod. That good of what was in the whale's mouth for 30 seconds. If you believe that, it's all fair. And left the war 30 seconds in the whale's mouth. But the great Drew Holiday, think about it. A lot of people thought he was going to call a timeout. They didn't want to fall into that hole, Big Z. Not a 3-0 hole, or definitely not the hole of the whale's mouth, if that makes sense to you. But from that moment, he made a decision. When you think about it, no NBA team has ever recovered from 3-0 in this part of the game, in the playoffs. But his driving layup with 11.4 seconds left, Big C, put the Bucks ahead for good, and they held on for an 86-83 victory on Thursday night. That cut Brooklyn's lead to 2-1 in the Eastern Conference semifinals, and he felt like he was going to call a timeout. Jrue Holiday said, in my head, he thought he was going to call that timeout, Big C, like the good old boy that was swallowed by the well. He couldn't call a timeout. He just had to get out. It's all fair and love and war. But you think about it, he saw Bruce Brown one-on-one, and he made a move. It was a good one, and he ended up getting that layup. The great Kevin Durant three-point attempt to tie it, bounced off the rim as the horn sounded. And you think about this. He scored the Nets' last 9 points and finished with 30. Durant's doing his thing every night, but he and that security guard, they got to work that issue out. Just imagine if Tucker had a security guard that came on the floor and thought that Tucker was going to be in some type of danger by Kevin Durant. And what if he threw a punch and knocked out Kevin Durant? These guys, a lot of them, that would be funny, wouldn't it? It would be funny until the lawsuits were filed. But a lot of these guys, they have special skills. They're not blowing wolf tickets or selling wolf tickets, and they know how to hurt people. That's why they're bodyguards. But you don't have to have a bodyguard coming onto an NBA court. That's something Adam Silver has to talk about. But when you think about it, Durant was doing his thing, scored the last 9 points, and almost knocked in about a 35-footer, but he had 2 men on him, and Giannis Antetokounmpo was one of those guys on him. So the Bucks will try to even the series on Sunday in Milwaukee. Milwaukee relied on his defense as the game featured the NBA's 2 highest scoring teams from the regular season, turned into a 1990-style defensive slugfest, Big C. It felt like us watching the bad boys from Detroit when they used to beat up Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls back in the day. But Brooklyn had its lowest scoring output of the season. Milwaukee matched its lowest point total of the season from its 125 to 180. It was 125 to 86 game 2 loss. And someone was going to win an ugly game, and that's what the Nets coach Steve Nash said, and it was them. It's all fair and love and war. We talk about the big guys that win games. The great Chris Middleton dropped 35 points. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he was dropping 33 points for the Bucks, Big C. Middleton bounced back in a big way after shooting a combined 13 of 43 in the first 2 games of the series. And that was barely enough. It's all fair and love and war. I love the way this game went right down to the wire. You would love to see more games do that. Giannis said it doesn't matter if you win by 1 or if you win by 30. All that matters is that you win, and then you can go back and celebrate that W. The Bucks raced to a 21-point lead, but had to come from behind at home with a little bit of help of the referees maybe, in scoring the final 6 points after the great Kevin Durant three-pointer made it 83-80 with a miraculous shot with 1:22 to play. And they did not make the shots down the stretch. Durant said he thinks they rushed a couple of opportunities at the end, and I thought they did too. The great Jrue Holiday, just 9 points and shot 4 of 14, but made the biggest basket of the night. It's all fair and love and war. You got to find, if you love NBA basketball, these 2 great teams, they were doing their thing. It's going to be you got to believe Game 4 is going to be very, very intense. I think Milwaukee's figured out a way to play the great Brooklyn Nets. You can't play them with fear. I don't know if they're going to win it, but at least they have a chance. And that's all you can ask for. It's a good old-fashioned 90s type of basketball game, in my opinion. Brooklyn was again without 9-time All-Star, the great James Harden out of Artesia High School and Arizona State. He also went down to that hamstring cell, but he's on a hamstring diet also. A lot of good old boys that pull their hamstrings. Also, Jeff Green has plantar fasciitis strain, and that hurts him. I understand how that feels when your feet have plantar fasciitis. It's all fair and love and war. But you think about the great James Harden, he got hurt in the opening minute of Game 1, and then Green hasn't played since Game 2 of the Nets' first-round series with the Boston Celtics. Joe Harris was only 1 of 11 overall and 1 of 7 on threes after averaging 16 points in the first 2 games. That's why they lost. The great Brook Lopez scored just 3 points, had 11 rebounds and 6 blocks. Giannis Antetokounmpo was only 1 of 8 on 3-point attempts. He was 4 of 9 from 3. I mean, think about that. On free throws, 4 of 9, that's not good. He had a 10-second violation on a free throw, and that's the second time this postseason has happened. He's 6 of 19 on free throw attempts this series. The Bucks are playing a home game with fans filling all the seats for the first time this season, and the crowd included even the great Green Bay Packers running back Aaron Jones, and outside of linebackers Darius Smith, as well as former Packers receiver Antonio Freeman. It's all fair and love and war. That arena was about 50% capacity for the Bucks' first-round series. It's going to get very tasty just like the Big C burger. It's a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats. You're going to see a lot of tastiness, or as they call it, testiness, in Game 4 in that series. It's all friend level work. We're going to take what's called a quick Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about some NBA basketball. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow Big C Sports, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. You know, going to the game in Utah, Game 2 in the Wasatch Mountains, it was the Utah Jazz. They beat the LA Clippers. It was 117-111. And when I heard one of the announcers say, "Is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Herald Club this morning? Is this the man who disabled a police car with a banana?" Well, you must be the pride of your department, the great Eddie Murphy. It's all fair level war. Well, the man who wrecked the Los Angeles Clippers, at least for 2 games, the great Donovan Mitchell dropping 37 points, Big C, in Salt Lake City, Utah, home of the Wasatch Mountains. What a beautiful mountain range, the Wasatch Mountains. The great Donovan Mitchell scoring went crazy, Big C. He sent the Utah Jazz into the lead, and defense to close the door on the Los Angeles Clippers. Mitchell dropping 37 points for the Utah Jazz, forced 9 straight missed shots down the stretch to outlast the Los Angeles Clippers, 117-111 on Thursday night, and take a 2-0 lead in the Western Conference semifinals. But if you're the Clippers, think about it. Tyronn Lue, you've been stepped over before. The great Allen Iverson stepped over you one time. But you guys still came back and won that series when the Los Angeles Lakers came back and bounced the Philadelphia 76ers back in the day. Allen Iverson knew what happened, and so did Tyronn Lue. So you were stepped over in Utah, but if you think about it, you had 9 straight misses down the stretch. Think about that. 9 straight misses down the stretch is not good to win any game, and you only lost by 6 points. That's incredible. You got to keep that in mind as you talk to your teams, but you know, give Utah credit. But Utah, they have a little hitch in their giddy up. The great Donovan Mitchell was limping off the floor at the end of the game, but Mitchell was clutch down the whole. I mean, when you think about it, down the stretch, yes, but the entire game, driving the shot with 43 seconds remaining. But then it appeared to hurt his leg slightly on a foul play by Paul George with 10 seconds to play. He made 1 of 2 free throws after hobbling to the line. That's something they got to figure out before they go back to the Pacific Ocean, where the tide will be high in the beautiful city of Angels, Los Angeles, Big C. He says he's fine, but he was walking with a limp, and no, he wasn't trying to be cool, Big C. It's all fair in love and war. But the guard is the Jazz first player, when you think about it, with at least 35 points in back-to-back playoff games since the great Karl Malone in 1988, Big C. But the points became more difficult in the game as the game wore on. He said he's just going to go out there and play through the pain. A lot of guys say that until it swells up on him. It's all fair and love and war. Jordan Clarkson dropped 24 points, including 6 3-pointers, while the great Joe Ingles had 19 points, and the great defensive MVP of the league, Rudy Gobert, contributed 13 points. But he had a career-high Wilt Chamberlain-like 20 rebounds. Big C, we need the Wilt Chamberlain Award when anybody gets over 20 rebounds. In fact, we're going to call it the Big C Wilt Chamberlain Award when anybody gets over 20 rebounds. And that's the only award we're going to name after Wilt Chamberlain. Big C, if that makes sense to you. You loved exotic meats too, if that makes sense to you. But we won't give awards out for that, not just yet. It's all fair and level work. Going back to the game though, Big C, the great series is still going to be a great series. You have 2 games decided by 9 points. Once the Clippers took their only lead at 101-99 after consecutive 3-pointers by Jackson, the Jazz forced 9 consecutive misses and a 14-2 run that was capped by Ingles' 3-pointer to make it 113-101 with 3:07 to play and a couple of non-calls. They were playing football up in Utah. Last I checked, Salt Lake City does not have a professional football team, but the people in LA, at least that's what they're saying, and they're sticking to it. But you can dig yourself out of a hole. I just told you about the man in Cape Cod who dug himself out of a hole, and the Clippers are going to have to clip themselves out of a hole too, Big C. if that makes sense to you. In the second half, the Clippers mixed up multiple coverages and cut off passing lanes, and usually you have good success when you can do that. But they got to come back, and they got to find a way to win that game in Los Angeles. They got to get 2. They can't just get 1. If they get 2, I'm sure they'll all get the Big C burger. We know it's a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats, and they got to have a better form of exotic defense to stop the Utah Jazz, coached by the great Quinn Snyder. Mitchell scored 27 first half points, the most by a Utah player in the last 25 years, Big C, to spark the Jazz early lead, and then a late second push to boost the score to 66-53 at halftime. It's all fair in love and war, but when you think about Mitchell, this is the man who wrecked the buffet at the Hera Club this morning, the great Eddie Murphy Beverly Hills Cop. Big C, he was 11 of 16 in the first half, did the same in the second half of the game, and he tallied 59 points on 22 of 32 shooting over those 4 quarters. I'm telling you, Mitchell's doing his thing. It's all fair in love and war. So many people are talking about what's going on with the great Kawhi Leonard, known as the Claw, and what's going on with Paul George. It's all fair in love and war. I'm gonna tell you a name that should have a big game in Game 3 back in Los Angeles. His name is Boogie Cousins. Someone has to challenge Gobert. DeMarcus Cousins has the size and the mentality to challenge Rudy Gobert, but in Utah, you're going to get called for a foul whenever you play good defense, and that's all fair and level war. Utah feels there's no such thing as a foul when they're in the home court. It's all fair and level war. We'll see what happens. But after posting the league's all-time best free throw percentage in the regular season at 84%, the Clippers made 20 of 23. Jackson's 16 third-quarter points were the most he scored in a single quarter this postseason, and they got to find a way to get that good old boy going. They can't just leave it up to Kawhi Leonard. It's all fair and love and war. I can't wait until we get to Los Angeles to see what's going to happen. Vivint Arena was actually packed with a lot of people. I think if you get back to Staples Center and it's packed full of cutout boards, Big C, it may not help them as much. They need a crowd. At least allow maybe 10,000 at Staples Center. That would help them. That's just my opinion. But congratulations to the Utah Jazz. They're the man who wrecked the buffet at the Hera Club this morning. It's all fair and love and war. The great Eddie Murphy. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about some NBA basketball. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps, and I really do appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Also, maybe, just maybe, coming on the fall of 2021, Big C Sports will be followed on Sirius XM satellite radios, all fair and love and war. Big C, back in the day, there was a movie called The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock, and it was actually filmed in Northern California, I believe in the city of Bodega Bay, and it was Alfred Hitchcock. You know, he never made a movie where people weren't scared about something, but he had these birds that they invaded Bodega Bay, and there was a lady, and they were just trying to go out and have a good time by the Pacific Ocean, Big C. Isn't it fun to go by the Pacific Ocean? But these birds showed up, and they made it hell on everybody, Big C. They were doing a lot of dirty things to people, if that makes sense to you. Well, rumor has it, there's some birds down in Atlanta. They call them the hawks. I think they're called protected species, Big C. But last I heard, there's a good old boy from Philadelphia. His name is Joel Embiid. He's an all-star player, and he's pissed off that he got a lot of votes that did not go into his mailbox, Big C, because a guy named the Joker got the MVP by the mainstream media. They wanted a mainstream vote, and they got the mainstream vote. They didn't do what Rudy Giuliani said, count all the votes. They didn't count all the votes. It's all fair in love and war. They're still saying they're finding boxes of votes that were being thrown out on the side of the rivers, Big C, in Philadelphia. It's all fair in love and war. But rumor has it, Joel Embiid, he loves the Big C burger. He knows it's a tasty burger. He knows it comes with exotic meats, Big C. And last I heard, he likes the hawk. It's one of his tasty exotic meats that he likes, Big C. The Philadelphia 76ers in a much-needed game. I know we talked about some injuries earlier in the show, Big C. Absolutely destroying. Simmons explodes to answer some big questions as the Sixers make a big statement down in the city of Atlanta. He came to life in the third quarter and answered all of his critics. with emphatic fashion, Big C, as the Philadelphia 76ers, they took down the Atlanta Hawks. They weren't as tough as those Hawks in the Alfred Hitchcock movie, Big C. It's all fair in Level War, the Birds. But the victory sees the 76ers take a 2-1 lead in their Eastern Conference semifinal series. And Simmons did get plenty of help with the great Joel Embiid. 27 points, Big C, leading the scoring, while Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, and a couple of other good old boys, Dwight Howard, all finished in double digits. It's good to see a good old boy with broad shoulders, Dwight Howard, on the floor, because he actually can box out and help get some rebounds. But when you think about it, Big C, this is a game for the record. Young finished with a team high 28 points. They call him Ice Trey. He didn't mess around and get a triple-double, paying homage to the great Ice Cube, Big C. He had 8 assists for the Hawks. It's amazing. He's a great player, but he can't do it all on his own. The great Joel Embiid showed up with those broad shoulders, and he came down looking for some Hawk Big C. But there's always been a big question over Ben Simmons, whether he had the game or the heart or the stamina, as some media pundits were saying that he's not a big-time player, even though he's cashed about $100 million in checks. If that's not big time, then oh well. But when you think about it, big play after big play on the offensive end when the Sixers needed it. The 3-time All-Star proved he could do just that in the third quarter, managing 11 points and 3 assists as the 76ers outscored the Alfred Hitchcock Atlanta Hawks Part 2 of that Big 50 and Big C, 34-19 to push away. NBA great Earvin Magic Johnson had tweeted pre-game that if the Sixers wanted to win Game 3 in Atlanta, Ben Simmons has to be more aggressive on the offensive end. And I think Big Ben, he listened to the great Earvin Magic Johnson. It's all fair in Level War. It's all fair that people want to criticize Ben Simmons, and he took over in the game. It was the reason that the Sixers pulled away. Coming into the playoffs, a lot of people were saying maybe he lost the heart and that he didn't have the desire to win. But you know what? All he cares about is the people on the court with him. And if Doc Rivers says that he has to, have a checkup for the neck up and get things right, then he'll do that. It's all fair in Level War. I really love seeing how people can go through the eye of the storm and they come out on top. Whether it's Giannis, whether it's Simmons or Embiid, everybody can criticize somebody. Paul George. It's all fair in Level War. Now the Sixers may have run out of big winners, but they did without Danny Green, who came from the court in the first quarter and failed to return after being diagnosed with the right calf strain. So that, that's something you want to keep an eye on in their 127-111 win over the pesky Hawks. To be called the Birds or the Hawks, Big C, I think Alfred Hitchcock called them the Birds, and I think they found that the Hawk is not his fight. It doesn't have the same kind of fight that the Bird has, if that makes sense to you. I thought Atlanta would play hard, and they did play hard, but they just don't seem to be able to match up with the great Joel Embiid. It's all fair in Level War. Everybody has their own opinion about who's going to win a game, why they're going to have success in the series, and it doesn't matter what we all think. It's all about what the players think. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. In the great Arnold Schwarzenegger words, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts on this beautiful late Friday edition. Before I talk a little about the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets, they gave out the MVP award to Nikola Jokic. And as Trump said, they're still finding some boxes that were tossed into the rivers in Philadelphia that had Joel Embiid's name on it. It's all fair in Level War, and that's a fact. It's all fair in Level War. But some news out on the West Coast, Big C. Everybody can say what they want to say about the LA Lakers. The perception that LeBron James' agent Rich Paul and his NBA team, currently the Lakers, are far too intertwined. There's some talk that Paul brought up the Nets, saying that they're the only team that can beat the Lakers. Sounded like a lot of partisanship. I mean, it's all fair in Level War. Observation for an agent with clients across the NBA, especially after all the criticism that he received when bringing Anthony Davis to the Lakers. He said he's got 6 guns on the team and shaking his head. Come on, man. Well, it was just Dwayne Wade, I believe, that was at the game in Utah, and he was trying to get Donovan Mitchell to recruit the Claw, and maybe even Paul George to bring them to Utah. I don't know, but nobody made us think about that, Big Z. So no matter what people say about Paul, he's doing his thing, and he's actually getting a lot of good support from basketball players that want to go and work with him. You think about it, he gets criticized a lot. There's a lot of attention because of Paul, the NBA's most notorious agent, some people say. Why is it being called that he's notorious when he's a black man and he's successful? No one's ever called Lee Steinberg notorious. No one ever called a lot of other guys notorious when they signed some of the biggest talent. I think Steinberg signed touchdown Patrick Mahomes. No one ever called him notorious. They called him the great agent. But it also gets attention because he's African American. Any agent with multiple clients is bound to face conflicts, and agents tend to prioritize their higher earning clients even when that's not LeBron. Hopefully everyone manages these inevitable issues, especially as much as possible. I mean, when you're going to be successful, people are going to criticize you. But you can't worry about who criticizes you. All you can do is focus on, are you getting what you need for your players? Are you getting what you need for the teams that are believing in you, and you're going to go and sign with whatever team or whatever agent? It's a tough business. We know that people, they do whatever they can to fight hard to get success in those games. I'm not going to get too much in. I mean, that's all fair and level war, and I'll leave it at that. I wish them nothing but the best. I'm going to talk about the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns. They're at home for Denver. They said it's really smoky in Denver, but there's no fires to be seen, Big C. What's all that smoke if there's no fires in the Denver area? I mean, it's all fair and level war. I think the smoke started about 4:20 p.m. in the afternoon, if that makes sense to you. Is this the man who wrecked the buffet at the Harrah Club this morning? But I will go just to the halftime of the game between the Phoenix Suns. They're up 2-0 over the Denver Nuggets. Halftime score was 59-55, and the Phoenix Suns have the lead at halftime at Denver. If Denver doesn't get this win tonight, then this series is probably going to end up in a sweep, because once you turn on an oven, the only way to turn it off is to turn it off, Big C. But if you don't have the off button, if you don't know where it is, you can't turn it off. And the off button right now is how do they stop Booker and how do they stop Chris Paul. That guy, Chris Paul, is Beethoven in my opinion. When you think about it, the great Chris Paul, this is his chance. You know, there's no Steph Curry to stop him this time. There's no LeBron James to stop him. He has a clear-cut path to the NBA Western Conference Championship, and that's a good team. The Ayton doing his thing. It's so important. Down 2-0, Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets hope to return the favor and turn around in Game 3, but they're down at halftime. Chris Paul and the great Phoenix Suns, Big C, they continue to impress this postseason. After taking down LeBron James because he did have a sore ankle, and Anthony Davis with that pulled groin, Big C. If you ever had a pulled groin, no one can say he's faking that. The Lakers have seized a 2-0 lead in the second round game against the Nuggets. Phoenix has to play like they played when they had Charles Barkley. Maybe better than that, because Barkley didn't win a championship, but they got close to it and they ran up against the Chicago Bulls. But I love this Phoenix team. I was surprised to see that they took down the Lakers, but the Lakers, when the Lakers were healthy, they were up 2-1. I'm not pulling for any specific team. I just want to see good basketball, and I do pull for the West Coast, since a lot of the people in the South, they pull for all the Southern teams, and you guys know that's true, you media. But Paul has been lights out, proving his shoulder injuries well behind him. The Suns guard put up 17 points and 15 assists with 0 turnovers in Game 2. He also enjoyed plenty of help from Devin Booker, who averaged 27 points a game and 6.4 rebounds, as well as 5 assists this postseason. And the good old boy can just shoot. He's at 50, 41, and 91 in shooting, Big C. And the Joker's coming off a rough outing Wednesday night. I know they're behind at halftime. I'm not going to talk about the second half, but they're trying to bounce back. At home, he's averaged about 36 points a game, but we'll see what happens. When you look for the NBA playoffs, everything it's about the depth of the benches. The players got to come off the bench and do whatever they can to help their teams win. I just love NBA basketball, whether it's going to be the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets. That game's going to take place over the weekend. The Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets doing their things now. The Utah Jazz and the LA Clippers got to find a way. In Philadelphia and Atlanta, I think with Philadelphia going up early, it's going to be really tough for Atlanta to come back. It's all fair and level war. But I will say, in the first part of the game, Ayton at 18 minutes, 7 rebounds, and 10 points. Booker, 15 points on 21 minutes and 5 rebounds. Chris Paul, 11 points on 19 minutes. And I'm telling you, this is a game that's going to go down to the wire. If there's a chance for the NBA to manufacture a win, yes, I said manufacture win, for the NBA MVP, when a lot of people who watch games with their own two eyes, they know that Joker's not the best player in the NBA, taking nothing away from him. I wish him nothing but the best, but he's not the best player. In the 19 minutes, he had 15 points. Aaron Gordon has 17 minutes, 0 points. Michael Porter Jr., 17 minutes and 8 points, Big C. That's not going to help them at all. But I don't know what's going to happen in the second half, but I can tell you this. What's going to have to happen in the second half is that the NBA officials up in Denver, being that they celebrate 420 so many times, Big C, they got to start finding a way to blow that whistle and try to get some teams in foul trouble that don't have on the white jerseys in Utah, in Denver. It's all fair and level. I love basketball. I love having fun with this game, and I'm wishing nothing but the best for all of these great players that are out there and just trying to do what everybody wants them to do. They just want to win. And all you can do is do the best you can and try to win games. I want to touch on the pitch. Hit deep. Right field. Back to the wall. Home run. Home run. They say the girls love the long ball and men love to hit the deep. It's all fair in Leavenworth. We have the Major League Baseball. The Pirates at the Milwaukee Brewers today. Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim at the Arizona Diamondbacks. And the Kansas City Royals are in the Bay Area taking on the Oakland A's. And then you also have it's always in Los Angeles, whether you're the Rams or now the Chargers, if you're the Kings, if you're the Clippers, it doesn't really matter. It's always about the Los Angeles Lakers. But the Dodgers are the defending World Series champions. The Lakers are the defending NBA champions. And the Dodgers put I'm not going to go into the final scores, but they're having batting practice, if that makes sense to you. Chavez Ravine against this good old Texas boys that call the Rangers. Is all fair in Leavenworth. There's another great game too. The Seattle Mariners at the Cleveland Indians. The San Diego Padres at the I said Brooklyn Mets, but there's New York Mets, Big C. The Chicago White Sox, the great Tony La Russa, and they're at the Detroit Tigers. The Florida Marlins, they're called Miami now, but the Miami Marlins at home against the Atlanta Braves. You have the Baltimore Orioles at the Tampa Bay Rays. The Colorado Rockies, they're on the road in Cincinnati at the Cincinnati Reds. And the Toronto Blue Jays of Buffalo are at Boston against the Boston Red Sox. Hopefully none of those guys will go deep sea diving at Cape Cod and get swallowed by a whale, if that makes sense to you, Big C. The San Francisco Giants, the city by the bay, went into the nation's capital and took care of the Washington Nationals. And you have the Cardinals and the Cubs doing their thing in Chicago, one of the biggest rivals in the world of Major League Baseball. It's all fair in Leavenworth. I love this time of year. There's so many great things to talk about. And also when it comes to baseball, word has it that 22 of the 30 teams now are at vaccination thresholds, Big C, which is a slow pace. 2 additional Major League Baseball teams have been able to relax coronavirus protocols after reaching an 85% vaccination threshold for players and other field personnel, raising that total to 22 out of 30 clubs. So hopefully more people will do what they can to make sure that they stay safe and still practice that social distancing, and don't think that everything is over just because a couple of good old boys told you that you don't have to social distance anymore. I want to make sure that we get on the top of this thing, and hopefully with more people doing their part, it will happen as people mask up and do everything they can to stay safe in the world of COVID-19 that we're still dealing with. I also want to just say, for all of the people, I just realized there was a lot of graduations going on, and I want to say congratulations to everybody who graduated either high school or college, and they're going to get the chance to go on to the next level of whatever they're doing in life. I wish them nothing but the best. Whatever you do in life, you got to rise and shine, and when you rise and shine, it doesn't matter if you have people support you, you got to support yourself. It's all fair in Leavenworth. I want to touch a little bit, Big C, on the NFL. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers public relations staff, they won the Rozelle Award, and it's based on, they won the Rozelle Award, the Pete Rozelle Award, former commissioner, Professional Football Writers of America, for his work in Super Bowl winning season that included the free agent edition of quarterback Tom Brady. The staff of Nelson Lewis, Michael Pinnock, and Chris King, as well as Andrew Holtman, Daniel Burns, and intake Jake Spitz, is the 32nd Rozelle Award winner. It's been the third time the Tampa Bay PR staff has been honored, and the others were done in 1998 and I think 2003 as well. It's all fair and love and war. You know, there's still talk, some talk, if that matters or not, in Green Bay. The Green Bay Packers signed another quarterback, Jake Douglas, and he signs, you know, they still have Aaron Rodgers, hasn't reported, didn't come to OTAs. They still have Jordan Love, but they're going to reload. They can't worry about what touchdown Aaron Rodgers is going to do, if he's going to be a part of the Green Bay Packers or not this season. But it's all fair and love and war. You know, we talk about so many things that are important. And I appreciate football players and all athletes, basketball players, doing whatever they can to stay healthy. And I really want to just congratulate, you know, Jordan Love. They have Blake Bortles there, Kurt Blankert, and then they have Dogala as well. Think about this. He had signed with the Cincinnati Bengals 2019. But there's something about Love. You get the chance to get drafted by an NFL franchise, and all the talk is about is a guy that's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, last year's NFL MVP. If he's happy, if he's going to come back and help the team win. Jordan Love played at Liberty High School in Bakersfield, California. He was an all-state player in California. Went on to Utah State and ended up playing good football at Utah State before being drafted in the first round by the Green Bay Packers. But here's a guy that's doing everything he can to just get ready to play good football. He said when asked if he's going to be prepared for week one as a starter, he said yes, he's going to be prepared for week one as a starter, Big C. I know everybody has their hopes about where Aaron Rodgers will end up. Aaron Rodgers has enough money to do what he wants. Is it selfish that he's going to hold everybody in limbo? Yeah, but it's also selfish when a team cuts you. And they don't even tell you they're going to cut you. They just let you go. But Love completed 20 of 31 passes during 11-11 passing this week. It was 7 for 10 during the drill-winning 2-minute drive that capped with an 8-yard touchdown pass to an outstretched receiver in the end zone. An 8-yard touchdown pass, Big C. It was 3rd and goal on the 8-yard line, and touchdown Aaron Rodgers didn't complete a pass against Green Bay versus Tampa Bay in the playoff game. It's just ironic that they both were 8 yards. Love completed the pass, and touchdown Aaron Rodgers didn't run for it, and it got away from him. It's all fair and love and war. People can say whatever they want to say about it, but I wish that young man nothing but the best. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. In the words of the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, we'll be back. All right, we're back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. There's so many apps you can follow Big C Sports, and I really do appreciate the way things have grown with Big C Sports. No matter where you get your sports, a lot of people turn to their favorite sports outlets when they want to follow their greatest sports podcast. Big C and I do it. We do it extemporaneous. We do it nonstop, 1 hour every day, Monday through Friday. We don't do it on the weekends yet because sometimes you just need time to do family time. But whether you get your sports news from the mothership, whether you get it Fox Sports, CBS Sports, it could be Sports Illustrated, it could be ESPN, it could be NBC Sports, whatever sports you do, I just appreciate the fact that we have a chance to be a part of the sports universe. A lot of people say they want to have a sports show, and they spend their time hoping and thinking and praying that they can make it happen. You're not always going to get the support of everybody, no matter what you do. But just go out and do the best you can, and if you get lucky and you wish upon a star, maybe you'll land that sports podcast that you really want since you were a little kid. It's all fair and love and war. I wish all the NBA teams a great showing in the NBA playoffs. Today is a late Friday edition. It's all fair and love and war. I think Big C went down to some type of game. They had a lot of chicken wings they were giving out for free, but it's all fair and love and war. I'm coming on late here from the West Coast, but the Toronto Raptors, their Pascal Siakam undergoes shoulder surgery. He's going to miss, some games there, so hopefully he'll get better, and with the help of medical technology, a lot of guys get better. Also, the Los Angeles Clippers, as if they needed any bad news, Serge Ibaka undergoes back surgery, and he's going to miss the rest of the playoffs. Not that they need him, because this is about Chris Paul, and not Chris Paul. Chris Paul's with the Suns, but it's about Paul George. His name is Paul, close enough. Come here, Paul. I don't know if it's Chris or Paul George, Big C. But Kawhi Leonard has to do his thing. Tyrone Lue, you've been stepped up before by the great Allen Iverson, and you told him I'd be back, and you came back, and the Lakers won that series. I think it was 4-1, and it's all fair and love and war. For people that want to get into ranking, everybody has their own opinion about who the best players are. But you think about when we look at basketball, whether it's Embiid or whether it's Simmons, for the 76ers, they're going to do their thing. Capella and Young got to do their things if Atlanta's going to have a chance. When you look at you can say it's more than one player, or sometimes you say, no, it's not one player. But I think Tucker, when he brings that moxie, that kind of got into the grill of Kevin Durant, that's going to help the Milwaukee Bucks. And, of course, Giannis has to do his thing. Holiday has to do his thing as well. And when you also look at the Phoenix Suns, Chris Paul and Ayton's doing his thing. But then, there's so many great players on the Phoenix Suns. But it all goes back to the leadership of Paul. With Chris Paul doing his thing, he makes everybody better. They're just going to get better no matter what anybody says. I know he didn't get the MVP award, Chris Paul, but I tell you, he's made the Suns a lot better team by having him on there than a lot of other players. Trae Young's got to do his thing in Atlanta also. No knocking on Jokic winning the MVP, but he's not the best player, and he even knows that, if he's honest. It's all fair in love and war. When it comes to the Clippers, the Claw has to do his thing. He has to. But also, Mitchell's a man among boys at times for the Utah Jazz, and maybe that time off helped him, Big C. I know even James Harden, he's going to get back into the thing, into the swing of things. The great Devin Booker, it's all fair and love and war. When he's doing his thing for Phoenix, that's very tough to beat. That sun gets very hot coming out of the Southwest. It's all fair and love and war. I know everybody has their favorite thing to do when it comes to eating, and I really do mean when you have a chance to sit around this weekend and eat, you're going to make sure you order the Big C Burger. It is a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats. People might say, well, what is a Big C Burger, and how can I get me one of those? I think for everybody who understands, at times, at least when I was growing up, Mama would she put whatever kind of meat she had in the refrigerator from leftover the last day or so, and mesh it together with some onions and some garlic, and chop up some onions and put different spices and seasoning on it, and she would put it together, and then she'd grill it. She always would grill the buns and put some mayonnaise on it or some mustard and just grill that, and it tasted so good. And you would say, my goodness, Mama, what you put on? What kind of burger is this? She said, it's a tasty burger, and it comes with exotic meats, and it's all fair and love and war. And I love eating the Big C Burger, and it comes with love. And for everybody else, it doesn't matter what people think about you in life. You're going to have good and bad. If anybody's going to do anything in your life, if people care about you, they'll see that you can fly. They want to help you fly. They're not going to try to clip your wings. Be careful of people that try to clip your wings. Sometimes they do it with a smile on their face. It's all fair in love and war. I want to close out today's show. We talked about the NBA basketball, and the playoffs are fantastic. WNBA, we mentioned them. The women are doing their things. There's also some UFC fight if you want to watch that over the weekend. I think some of those fights, they happen every week. You really don't get the chance to miss them. Major League Baseball, they're all swinging the bat, the pitch. Hit deep. Right field. Back to the wall. Home run. Could be a lot of home runs this beautiful weekend. But at the same time, I know there's talk about expanding the college football playoffs. And how would it look with 12 teams that are going to line up for the college football playoffs for Division I? They already do it in Division II. They even do it in Division III. They do it for nearly every high school in the United States of America. They don't just pick 4 teams to decide who the best team in the state of California is. How dare they just choose 4 teams to decide who the best team in college football is? Whether it's from California or Florida or Texas or Ohio, there's a lot of good football programs out there. In every one of those states, they pick more than just 4 teams to decide if they're going to win that championship game. They make sure they get the chance to earn it. And I think that's all people are asking for. If you've been left out of the college football playoff and you're asking for a chance to compete, for people who say, well, that's too many games, what if somebody gets hurt? They can always opt out. I think most people want to play because life's about living. You got to get up and rise and shine. If you're afraid, then just don't play. If you think you're going to get hurt, then just don't play. There's so many people that say, well, what if somebody gets hurt? Then just don't play. You got to take chances in life, and I wish the very best for everybody to at least have that conversation of how to make it better. And as you go forward, do what you can to stay healthy. NFL football is also talking about expanding. They want to play more games in Europe. When you think about it, they want to play some games in Germany. NFL is planning on doing that. Why not play some games in Africa? 75% of the league, they have heritage that comes from Africa. All life began on the African continent. Why is the NFL running away from the biggest gene pool of their players? It's all fair and love and war, but there's a lot of stadiums in Africa that can bring NFL football there. That's where a lot of people originated from anywhere before the diaspora all over the world. I want to say, everybody, enjoy this great weekend. Thank you for following Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. You can hear us on the iHeartRadio podcast. You can hear us on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. There's so many apps you can hear us on. I really appreciate that. As my mom always says, that's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.